Attention all operators on countdown 1. This is the final go, no go for flight 2 of Starship. Again, our 20 is at 7 a.m. Central. Raptor 1.
Go.
Raptor 2.
Go.
Stage 1.
Go.
Stage 2.
Go.
Copy, go for flight. Clock is rolling. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have liftoff.
Boost stretcher cut off. Stage separation.
Attention all operators on countdown 1. This is the final go, no go for flight 2 of Starship. Again, our 20 is at 7 a.m. Central. Raptor 1.
Go.
What's going on, guys? How you doing?
Doing well.
Maddie, write this date in history. I am not moderating a session today. This is brilliant.
I
love it.
October 16th, Thursday, 8:01 p.m.
Oh,
I
man.
thought I would kick us off just out of curiosity. So for the last couple of days, I was thinking about what do I want to play as the intro sound before we kick it off. Don't know if you knew what that was.
That was
Starship.
Maddie, you got to stop with this. Unless it's something with Bollywood, I don't know.
James, Bollywood, any Bollywood songs you know?
no, not me. You don't want to hear me singing Bollywood or anything. Anything
By the
for
way,
that matter.
do you like Indian food?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
spicy. What's your spice level? 1 to
Yeah,
10.
spice. I like spice.
Interesting. We're
Be
gonna have to
careful
do
what
some
you ask
spice in Calgary. We're gonna have to do some spice in Calgary. This is amazing. This is our first official kickoff of the briefing, Operation Defend the North. The objective about this, and Ali and I have been talking for some time, is how do we give voice to what we're doing with Operation Defend the North? I seem to be behind the camera or really not present as much. I love working in the weeds. And my PR team and et cetera have said, you know what? No, come out. It's time. So that was Starship, Elon Musk takeoff on a nice little video. So I said, you know what better theme music to come out on? And we're joined by the man, Ali, who I look up to, who's been on this journey with cyberX from a very long time. And one of the greatest things about Ali is the ability to simplify things and to explain things and to make everyone sound good. So Ali, it is an honor, a pleasure to share a space with you, a virtual space with you. And then we have James. By the way, Ali, I was asking about James in the pack. I don't know if you noticed that nice little picture in the back there. The General. James, we've met just recently, but we feel like we've known each other for eons. The CISO at Bow Valley College doing amazing things. And so when we approached James not too long ago, and we said, look, we would love to bring Operation Defend the North. We would love to do Young Defenders of the North and a whole bunch of other really cool things. James just said when and what time and where, and I'm there. So, first of all, right off the bat, I want to give you a warm virtual hug, and then hopefully in a few days, a proper hug. But James, I would love for you to just kick us off and just tell us a little bit about Bow Valley College right off the bat, what you do there, the amazing work. We'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, so I've been there for many years, so I've actually been able to see the organization kind of grow and change over the years. And now there's really interesting things, everything from, and Ali knows that, being on some of the program advisory side of things to a lot of our software development, we have a cybersecurity program that's a small but mighty program, I would say. We're also we delve all and have over many years in the healthcare aspect and side of things, where we have our practical nursing is I think one of the largest in Canada, actually. But in addition to that, one of the real cool things that we get to work alongside too is our Center for Entertainment Arts, and they do everything from game design through there's film studies, virtual effects, and you name it. So there's kind of this real gamut of things that you see that's going on at the organization, and I'm sure I don't do it justice when we're talking about all the programs that we have there. So.
Yeah, and I encourage a lot of folks out there, if you get a chance to check out Bow Valley College, you guys are small but mighty. And we've had the opportunity, I've had the opportunity, and our team at cyberX has had the opportunity to check out actually we have quick story here. So a part of Operation Defend the North, we have breaking news reports that we play. Our prime news anchor, I guess, is Roshan Khan, who does a great job. However, we want to change it up a little bit, and we used the production team, journalists, amazing journalists out in Calgary at Bow Valley College that recorded it, which was pretty cool as well. So in a few days, actually tomorrow, and we are getting on from YYZ, heading over to the nice and sunny. I think it's one of the most sunniest cities in Canada. From what I understand, there's an interesting fact. Calgary is a very sunny city. We're going out there, and then we are kicking off Operation Defend the North inaugural in the beautiful province of Alberta. So here's a question for you. I know you've seen it. How are you feeling?
Oh, I mean, I've got nerves. I always have nerves on run up. I've been with besides Calgary too, and I don't sleep well for the first little bit ahead of it, because I'm just thinking, what about this? And I mean, you know from running events that there's always those things, and if you've got a good team behind you, that these things can become easier each time. But yeah, definitely, I'm always like, okay, what about this? And trying to noodle through things that probably will figure themselves out as we go too. So
I'm curious if Ali's going to throw you under the bus. So
yeah, of course, General with the J. No, listen. You guys can throw me under buses. The buses won't survive, but that's a separate discussion. But you know what, General with the J. I'll be very, very open when I say this. Is when you assume the role of a chair or a co-chair, there's a responsibility that comes with it. It's not just like, oh, let's just sit and take the accolades and sort of just be like, all right, benefit from the marketing and the press. I gotta say, along with Alex, you're one of those people that have really absorbed the role and seen the return and the value that this brings to people. And I just want to give you a shout out for that, because it's one thing to work with things in the same province. It's another thing to actually do it across provinces, interprovincially. And I really, really, truly feel is that with this partnership that you helped create, it's created opportunities not just for Bow Valley College and CyberX. It's created opportunities for others who've got other incentives in cyber, in AI, in other tech, and other industries to realize what those collaborations can look like. And I think the biggest takeaway for me, mostly in colleges, you'll see academics and administrative IT, they sit separately. They don't even talk. You're one of those few individuals who talks, and Sohail Patel speaks highly of you. That collaboration that you've instilled in Bow Valley College, I can see why you've been successful in it. So really, kudos to you, and thank you for your really tireless efforts.
Well, thank you, and I'm going to say it goes both ways. I mean, your work alongside Suhail as well, and bringing that side of the house. We got to kind of lean on each other when we're doing things here. So that's I'd say it goes both ways that way too. So, but thank you.
And so
I can't throw him under the bus now, because we still have to get to Calgary, and once we're there, you don't know, this guy might have more than buses, Mr. General. So I'm going to play cool.
That's going to be exciting. We're really pumped up because we were there last year on the West Coast in Vancouver, And originally, this all for those that are there, and just for documentation as well. The vision here was about a year and a half ago in Toronto at the inaugural Operation Defend the North, which was held at the province of Ontario's physical building, which was one of those powerful moments. And where we are today, it feels like forever, but we are here today. And so Calgary is exciting because it's the first time going in. And from some expectations, we as Torontonians that are coming in there, what are some of the things that we should know about when it comes to Calgary, James?
Well, I mean, Calgary, I'm gonna say, is very, very welcoming. They have the white hat ceremony that they've done with people throughout the years. I think they're driven. They want to contribute. I think that's all big things that kind of embody what Calgary is and does.
Yeah, and we got the big Calgary Stampede there that a lot of people know. You have the 1988 Winter Olympics that was held, that I remember, my first Olympics that I ever remember. You have the likes of Lanny McDonald. You have the likes of some great moments that have happened in Alberta, even with the Olympics, with the and a whole bunch of amazing things. So it's going to be exciting. Ollie, you've been to Edmonton many times, or Calgary, Edmonton, a couple of times?
Yeah, a couple of times. I've been there to be a part of the energy. Know a few folks at the University of Calgary, collaborated with a couple. I think I've been there twice during my Orion days. We got to do a lot of work with Cybera, and all of those individuals. So I have a lot of fond memories of that area. I haven't been to Bow Valley College before. What I think is going to be very interesting about being in Calgary is, I think every venue is unique. Every venue has its own energy. Every space is arranged differently. This one, when I saw the videos, it's classroom style, but it's got these big windows around you as well. So I guess people will be able to see inside. So it's going to be very interesting. And again, I think it's, as you're preparing and as you're briefing yourself to go into Operation Defend the North, knowing the room that you're going to be in. There's a lot of unknowns in this one. So I'm excited for it. And I think it's going to have its own energy, just like Vancouver and Ottawa and Toronto. It's going to command its own energy and its own presence. So looking forward to it.
Well, the energy is a little bit different right now too, right? In the world, or in Canada, right? You have Canadian Tire, something that us Canadians that were born and raised here remember the smell of that. When you walk into a Canadian Tire, it has a unique smell. They should actually make cologne or perfume about it. Maybe they do. And what has happened there, and then you have some craziness in Kelowna. Just from a West Coast standpoint, James, is that got people on pins and needles out there, or?
A little less than I would expect. Like, I would, in some ways, like it's kind of like you never waste a good a good issue that comes up or scenario. But yeah, it's not reached kind of critical mass, which is kind of interesting. I think people right now are acting more like they're saturated with that information, which I would hope to see, kind of when you see stuff like that, especially that's very readily apparent, like what happened in Kelowna, and that you'd see more of that. But I'm not seeing really much of that yet, so maybe it will in a few days, but
it'll be interesting to see. So Ali, I want to just if you can summarize to a certain extent what has happened in Ottawa, and really, let's start there. What has happened in Ottawa? Can you kind of summarize what that is, and then kind of take us into potentially what we're walking into when we come to Calgary on Operation Defend the North?
So put it this way: what happens in Ottawa does not stay in Ottawa. This attacker is going to move laterally. And when we came to the conclusion in Ottawa, I mean, those of you who watched Module 4, and I'm sorry, Amit, I'm going to do this to you, but we kind of just made the CTO look like the bad person. It was true, because they hadn't really read their third-party contractor agreements properly. So put Amit on a donkey and rode him out into the sunset. But the attackers were still coming back. And we knew this. I think there are three things you want to keep in mind as to what happened in Ottawa. The first, it was driven potentially by something socio-political. This was the ethos behind the attack. The attack was not driven by, hey, let's cause disruption and ransomware. It was caused by, let's cause chaos. It's not about finances. And chaos then cripples the rest of the society and causes people to turn in against themselves or on each other. So that's number one. the motivation. Number two, we always talk about insider threats in ODTN, but really in this situation, it looked as though the MSP potentially could have been compromised, the third-party provider could have been compromised, but unknowingly. And this is a very, very important piece to it, because questions started getting asked is, okay, the IRCC system has been hit, but this AI LLM that they were using was built by a third-party contractor. And then we had conversations on what was the third-party contractor's hiring practices. Yeah, they had a SOC 2, that's fine, but you still can't validate against it. And a lot of questions started coming up that were talking about processes and procedures that may have led to this. So the MSP may have been infiltrated, and it was not easy to simply say, yes, the MSP is to blame. Something has happened here. And that MSP is a Canadian MSP at that too. So you can't necessarily turn on against them as well and be like, oh, it's your fault. They're still a Canadian entity. The third piece, which I found very interesting, and I think this is the piece that's going to take us into the situation in Calgary, is all of these attacks, the way they were happening, it's happening in a way where there are some things that you're seeing as anomalous activities, but it's the speed to not just getting an alert, it's the speed to actually understanding that alert, going through it before realizing what is going on. The timing piece is going to be critical. So when we come into Calgary, I think that if you extend it, the scenario that you're going to deal with is, yes, there is going to be an outage. But you will see this time around that instead of saying, yeah, there's been an outage, a particular service is down, there's going to be a bit of a revelation in terms of how an entity, let's say hypothetically, an entity that provides energy also runs other subsidiary services that if those are attacked, other critical services could go down as well. I think the focus in Calgary is going to be whichever entity it is that is hit by potentially the same attacker, they have understood this entity and all of its different functions to cause a serious mess within the Alberta space before moving potentially into Vancouver. So it's going to get more in-depth, it's going to get more technical, and the architecture of the operations that has been impacted will really become apparent in modules 1 and 2, much more than what we saw in Ottawa or in Vancouver before.
Interesting. And one of the things that, I don't want to make humor of this, but it is a little bit funny, and that is the last one that we were talking about in Ottawa was on September the 24th. And I think this has happened before in Vancouver again and in Toronto again, where I'm not saying we're prophets or we have crystal balls, but we've made certain fictitious assumptions or scenarios. I don't know what the right word is right now. And on your screen here, you can see Canada faced passport scanning chaos at European airports. Now, this article here was written weeks ago that we wrote. Ironically, on September 24th, if anyone does any Google search, you will see there was a scenario that happened in Europe. Or James, even, I would love to hear your thoughts on what happened in Europe and how similar it matches to what we kind of predicted. And then the scary part here, Ali, is there any predictions that you're making, or can you tell us so maybe we're prepared if YouTube's going down or anything's happening?
James, why don't you go first while I can jure up some butter chicken to answer this question?
Well, I would say, regardless of even just specific scenarios, I think what's speaking to us a little bit is as security professionals and the different advisor groups and that we bring forward to bring these sectors together, we're seeing things that we feel that's our gut check that, that's going to be the issue or one of the issues that's a major concern or there's this may happen. And we're kind of seeing that because of that amount of knowledge within the industry. So I think getting that close is probably just an amalgamation of experience, intelligence, and that you're seeing across multiple. I think that's what's kind of happening here.
No, I think here's your bigger thing is building on what James said, and I say this a lot, but I think not enough. Almost everyone, and again, the purpose of ODTN is not necessarily just to hit your technical folks, your red team, there's an element of this is ODTN as well, and truly an educational initiative as well. It's a gamification of our education, edutainment, if you will. People are now slowly but steadily beginning to realize that all of these attacks don't just rely on something technical going off. There's something in the HR side, there's something on the process side, something on the marketing side, which ultimately creates an in and creates an avenue for something to happen. And what is very, very interesting, I can't predict what's going to be next, but hey, if we're going to look at history historically, who would have thought 2022 Costa Rica declares a state of emergency over a cyber attack, right? Could something like that happen in our ecosystem? I surely hope not, but OVTN is going to prepare you for it. And I think Calgary, you may get to a point where a state of emergency might have to be declared. So it's going to get interesting to see how that moves, how that transpires. What is very, very, very unique, Maddie and James, is when you're engaging in ODT, and I have the privilege of having all those screens in front of me, I get to see the online chat. In Ottawa specifically, I would venture to say, out of every 6 comments that we got suggesting, did you check this, did you check that, at least 4 of them were from individuals who are not necessarily programmers or coders or pen testers. They're process-oriented critical thinkers. And that is, for me, that big revelation which tells you how people are engaging with this scenario. So making it into that genuine, true team sport is what we're heading towards. And I think we're going to see some very difficult questions come up in Calgary.
And so, James, this is I know you've experienced this from far, and Alex, many people that come to this, right? One of the things I have to introduce Operation Defend the North with, especially in the early days, was with nothing. I had to speak to people and say, hey, we're doing a tabletop exercise. They're like, and we're doing like an event. What do you mean? And so the questions started coming, whether it's our vendors, whether it's our partners, whether it's even an advisor, someone just jumping in, they would be like, okay, what do you mean? Like, what role am I playing? What am I doing? How am I doing it? Where am I doing it? When am I doing it? Because everyone's used to your typical tabletop exercise, which is run playbooks, instant response. You have all the right team there, and it's internal, and you're able to discuss it, and you know who to point fingers at. Looking from far, and I know you've looked at some of the videos and experienced it, what's the most unique thing about this? And because I do want to ask you after the event and say, what did you think? But going into this, what do you find unique about a setup like this, and what attracted you to say, you know what, yeah, I want to bring Operation Defend the North to Bow Valley College?
I'm going to say for me, probably that comes back to how spicy it can get a little bit. I think when you do an internal, tabletop, you play nice, right? You're like, oh, and now we would talk to this person, and it takes out the stress, that everything that's going on. I think with having a scenario of this size and the production, I think what happens is it adds back in maybe a little bit of that stress, that additional side of things where when an incident's happening, you're not necessarily playing quite as nice as you would before. You're tired. It's normally 5:30 on a Friday. You've had a long week and that sort of thing. So I think those things kind of add to it. So to me, to see that, like how are people acting as advisors, acting in those roles, coming into it, with not necessarily having the rapport with somebody else from before. Not you're going to communicate to someone like this is the first time you've met them, and I think that mimics what can happen in if you're dealing with regulatory, you're going to be picking up the phone or to the CCCS, you're going to be picking up the phone to someone that you don't know, you don't have that relationship with. So I think seeing that is kind of it's really a good way to see how resilience works across organizations because of that too. So getting a bit of lens into that.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. And it's going to be, for us, it's going to be, what's going to be interesting is, the vision was always, how do you take cybersecurity and you make it consumable for the average human bear? And so over the past year and change that we've been hosting these Operation Defend the North, personally, I receive a lot of emails and messages on LinkedIn, et cetera, and saying powerful stories people share that they say, I never thought this was an important thing to look out for, or I purchased ham radio, or I purchased food and water, and we now, one of the things that Octavia said in our first Operation Defend the North was, make sure you have your booklet of your emergency response plan, your disaster recovery plan up to date with all the information. Ali, how do you prepare? I want to get into your mind for a moment, leading into like 48 hours, 24 hours, 2 hours. How do you prepare for something that you can't script? Because a lot of people think we script this. We sit there and go, okay, James, now you say this. Ali, you laugh, you chuckle, right? Like it's free flowing. How do you prepare leading up these next few days?
Look, I don't want to sugarcoat this. You either have it to moderate this or you don't. It is not something that you can just learn on the fly. Yes, there is a little bit of knowledge that comes into it, but it's experience of being in that moderator seat. I will be the first one to very openly say this, with unashamedly so. My security knowledge is probably not even half of what James has, or what half of the other CISOs around the table. Yes, I may have gone to school for this stuff, but it comes down to experience. It's the same thing with moderating something like this. If you've had the experience, you'll be able to flow. If you don't have the experience, it is not the kind of position that you want to just sit on and then just look at a prompt and say, well, what do you think? So, truth be told, this is not for everybody. And this is something that you realize. And because we're talking about the briefing, I'll be very open with you. When we're having some of our advisory meetings, we'll say, hey, who anybody wants to chair or anybody wants to moderate the session? And at first, everybody's like, yes, sure, we'll try. The minute you realize there's no questions, there's no script, it's the prompts are here, look at the camera, we'll get people alert that something's going on. I will leave you with this. If you want to genuinely run tabletops and also run them in a broadcast fashion where people can look at it, honest to goodness, Maddie, 2020, when you introduced me to the concept of Dungeons and Dragons, and I started to watch more of that, that was a very, very good starting point for me in terms of how to build that narrative. You have to be a storyteller to do this. If someone asks me how much do you prep the night before, do you look at all the prompts? Honest to goodness, I just look at all the prompts so I know where they are and I know how to bring them up on the screen. That's it. Everything else that happens, maybe minus the land acknowledgement, and okay, we're in module 1 and this is a time wrap, everything else happens at the moment, and that's just how it is. Again, there might be some other tabletop hosts who figure out another way and another pedagogy to it. For me, that's the process, and that's what keeps it organic, entertaining, and fluid in real time. Because remember something, in these scenarios, you have to be constantly waiting or ready for something to go on. You may have a mic issue, you may have a video issue, you may have somebody's phone ring, you may have somebody going, I want to say something else. It's all going to happen. You just have to learn how to move on the go. So scripting it doesn't necessarily work.
James, in your lifetime, from I know you've been in the cybersecurity space for a very long time in various capacities and et cetera. How many situations have you been in that are tense in the above 7, let's just say, and like, how do you prepare mentally when you run a just exercise? So number 1 is, how do you prepare when you run an exercise a week from now, let's say, and then number 2, when you're actually in it and you're trying to go back to those lessons learned and those documentations, how close is that?
Yeah, I mean, the tabletop's never going to quite cut what the real thing is, like the emotions. But so I think probably for me, those above 7 type moments, there's probably been 4 or 5 in my career that I would consider those moments that they're just like that. And so what I try to do, I guess, is and you've kind of spoke to a little bit, but basically try to remember that emotion, remember that feeling that, what happens when you first get into this, how do you feel? And then try to actually emote that, when you're in that tabletop. The same thing is okay, not just the initial thing that's happened, but okay, you're now getting into single-minded focus. What does that mean? And so how do you emote that in the tabletop as well? So I think that's, for me, that's been kind of the things that I try to, you know, reconcile a little bit. So it's not just, you know, oh, this is easy. I have everything with me. I have all my documentation with me. Some other things we've done is just try to make it real, add lag into communications, add, you know, that sort of thing. So I think, you know, understanding that, you know, you take those kind of, I'm going to say, those career, maybe not career defined, but career bending moments.
For sure, definitely.
You know,
career bending.
and kind of just take the understanding of, okay, yeah, this is how I felt in this. This is what it felt like. This is how I interacted. You know, this is, so hopefully this would be kind of, you know.
So I'm going to put you on the hot seat here.
Yep.
The one that like really bended moment in time for you and really defined cybersecurity at a level, because that's the pinnacle, right? The 10 that you had. How long was it? I know you can't get into details, or maybe you can, but, and if you can, please share. But how long was it? Just keeping, you know, evading the answer in some way. How long was it? What did it feel like? Can you just tell us a little bit, get some more depth behind that moment?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of cool stories that I can't tell about it, but
of course,
but basically the first one that really was my real true foray into moving from kind of operational into cybersecurity was doing forensic analysis. Something big had happened. And it was about a 3-day, I was locked in. Remember being locked in a room with no AC, doing the forensics, doing the analysis. And
how old were you? Were you a young guy? Like,
about 15 plus years ago. So,
and like food, like just that typical scenario.
Yeah,
very little food.
Locked in the room. Nobody else was allowed in with me, essentially, because they were looking at making sure we had, you know, eyes on the device at all times and that sort of thing. And I mean, you basically
just bathroom breaks,
and you basically like had a fresh shirt there. That was the kind of thing. And it was like, yeah. And so it was when we did the analysis and it broke, and then media broke on that. That was interesting, because that was the first time, you know, like I remember the organization and the audible gasp of like when we had to talk to reporters, and we're in front of a scrum, and I'm standing at the back going, okay, this is. The rubbers, you know, not just me doing the technical skills, but the rubbers hit the road of how this has occurred for the organization. Now what? And that was my first foray into it, and it really solidified me to actually go, no, this is what I want to get into. This is what I want to do full time, and go from there. So yeah, that was definitely definitely kind of the key moment that brought me into cybersecurity, was incident response, doing forensics, and kind of then. Everything else that gets encompassed from there.
Do you miss it? That moment?
In some ways. I mean, not in the stress and what it meant for the organization, but from the aspect,
like professionally.
Professionally, yeah, absolutely. I would say you kind of look at it and go, okay, this is, you know, a canon moment or something like that.
See, it's interesting because, Ali, remember the first one that we did was 3 days. And I'll use people like George Alcura and a couple of other people that sat for 3 days. There were certain people that came in for a day, looked nice, put on their cologne, and they were gone, you know, an hour in. And that's all great, right? But you don't really feel it. And you're talking about, you know, not able to shower, not able to eat properly, not, you know, stressed, no AC, heat. And if anyone wants to go back to Operation Defend the North, the first one that we did, and especially the final lessons learned, and you look at some of the faces, and one of them I'm going to use is George, because I looked at him and he goes, you know what? This is the 3rd day in. Like at the end, he was like, now I'm feeling it. And so, Ali, like I know you were in the thick of it for 3 days, like nonstop. You became Operation Defend the North. What James is saying is it bringing back some in your professional life too? How does that relate?
There's a thrill. Look, again, every personality is different, but when something happens in your environment, obviously, direct ransomware, then you are panicking a bit. You know, there's a lot of emotions, a lot of personal terror that you go to at that moment. But I'll tell you one thing: depending on the nature of what you're dealing with, when there is some sort of an incident which hasn't crippled service delivery, but to some extent it's created some stress as to how did this happen. I won't deny there's a thrill in investigation. There's a thrill in finding out what has actually happened. And there's certainly a very, very, very big thrill when you actually solve what has happened and how you're going to respond. And I think a lot of it comes down to what's your mentality as a security leader. I say this in the class all the time, and I'm not going to mince my words. Security is warfare at the end of the day. You gotta be ready for a fight. You gotta have that mentality. There's no two ways about it, at least as far as I'm concerned. So when you're in this scenario, you're in that fight, you're in that moment, and there's a thrill that comes to it. That's what it is. It, for me, very honestly, it's almost like a sport to some degree, because you look at, I watch a lot of cricket, right? And you look at some of the best cricketers that are out there on the ground, extremely fierce. Outside of it, they are completely different. It's one of those moments. When you're in Operation Defend the North, it's like you're playing that role, and there's a thrill and a buzz to it that once it's all done, you calm down. I kind of get quiet. I enjoy my coffee, shake a few hands, and I go to sleep. But in that moment, there's a huge thrill that comes out of it. When people ask me, like, 3 days or 5 sessions in a row, yeah, there's a thrill, there's a kick that we get from all this stuff. And it's either for you or it's not.
That's what it is, that thrill. And so, James, if you could tell your 15-year-old a year ago self, the guy in that white T-shirt in the no AC room, what kind of advice would you give yourself looking at things now in the future?
I think pace. I mean, when you look at things like, I think back then I was trying to figure it out right away, and so the pacing of it was a bit interesting. I think for myself, I was double. It was really, really hard for me to kind of come back to my work and double check what I was doing, making sure I was doing it right, articulating it well, articulating properly, because we knew it was going to be opened by reporters, is going to be opened by regulators, is going to be, like all those sorts of things. So that for me was probably the thing, is giving myself a bit of grace to be able to deal with kind of the situation and understanding that, you kind of have to go slow to go fast. So I think that was probably the biggest thing for me was that, because I remember getting frustrated myself. Well, I should have been done the analysis, 36 hours in, and it was still you're still kind of going on and making sure that everything is buttoned down, that there's you have a really good understanding of what's going on, and then can articulate that. And back then, my speaking in front of people had not, or speaking even to the director level or VP level, had not really occurred that often. So I didn't have that to fall back on to be able to articulate it well. So it was really quite a stretch to be able to do that then. So yeah, I think probably taking what it is, understanding what you're doing, giving yourself that grace, and then being able to communicate on that too.
Well, how does that apply to what James is saying, like in terms of when you're in the thick of things in module 3 or in module 4?
Look, again, I'll go back to, you have to differentiate between, when you're doing ODTN, there's performativity to it, right? The back of your head, you're going, am I keeping the narrative cohesive? Am I keeping people engaged? So you have that piece as well. There's the reality of what's going on and keeping that going, but there's also about keeping the engagement going from those people that are watching, because you need that. And again, I will come back to it. That is a skill. To a degree, it's just you either have it or it just comes with experience. I will never recommend anybody be in that situation if you haven't done it before, number one. Number two is, when you're in the thick of things in module 3, I don't think people understand that each module is 60 minutes, at max 75. There's so many things you have to finish in that time period that, yes, you will get the audience going, what about this? Oh, we missed this, we missed that. I get it. But then there's that little time slot, which is, I think at the end of the day, Maddie, at first, it was tough. Like, for example, when we came out of the ODT in Toronto at the Hotel X, you and I spoke and said, I think we missed a couple, and you're right. But then I realized I only have 65 to 70 minutes. But I think this is that opportunity where maybe ODTN, when you go into 2026 with different chairs and different hosts, and obviously I'll still be a part of it in some capacity, I think it's going to be very important to see what the pre-ODTN, so what the pre-modules are going to look like, whether that looks like training, whether that looks like additional demos, I don't know. But I feel like now ODTN, with all the lessons that you're learning, especially module 3, module 4 moment, it's giving you food for thought in terms of how to evolve this into a truly multi-day national exercise. So what we feel in module 3, module 4, I think are very good stepping stones. Listen for the gaps, watch for the gaps, and start building on top of it.
Well, my vision is at some point, and I love giving these ideas out for those that are listening as well, and to reach out to us as well. Is exactly that, a national across, from Calgary to Vancouver, coast to coast, one day exercise where you have colleges and universities and people all across uniting together to help defend Canada. Now, one of the things I want to switch gears just to from a student standpoint and education, because I want to kind of lean back to Bow Valley College and the great team there that have been excellent. One of the things we're doing is Young Defenders of the North, and Young Defenders of the North is the premise behind that is how do we take young folks and give them experience. And for me, you can learn all the things in class, you can read as many books, you can do all of that, but until you're in a fight, it's all just theory. And a part of ODTN kind of goes, there's three types of combat. One is real in the back alley of a 7-Eleven where you meet someone and he pulls out a knife. That's the real deal. Then you go into kind of like UFC, where it's hand-to-hand combat, but there's limitations and referees and things you can do, so it is a little bit boxed in or octagon in, no pun intended. And then you have WWE, where these athletes are superb. They're specimens of fine, but it's fake. That punch across the face is not real. And ODTN feels like a cross between WWE and UFC. I know that. And when people say, "Oh no, that wouldn't happen," I'm like, "Yeah, we know that, because if that was to really happen, we wouldn't be airing it online." The purpose of this is education. And so one of the things I say to students all the time is, you want to learn cybersecurity, watch what happens in an incident. And so with Young Defenders of the North and the students at Bow Valley, can you give me some thoughts on how are they feeling about what's about to come down? Have you been able to speak to the students there and the excitement level? And from an experience standpoint, do you think running a drill like this is beneficial for students, for high school students, university students across anywhere in the world to do things like this?
Absolutely. So I haven't been able to discuss as much as I was like. I mean, I'd always like to take more time to spend with them, but I would say that, seeing what we've seen with, with student involvement, with being able to work with them in our sockets, for example, sometimes, that anything that we can do to provide experience, and that's operational, that's in the incident, anything we can do to give them that view, that window into it, even if you're saying it's a cross between UFC and WWE, even if you can see people running through, I'm gonna say, a bit of the motions, but it's the motions that we have to go through. That's crucial. I mean, you don't, well, I'll step back. Maybe for them to see, what's going on, to see the event happening, to see somebody launch a missile of a comment to somebody else, on that table. I think that's crucial. They need to understand that you don't necessarily just play nice. Your incident response playbook doesn't just play out, as it stands in there. There's a lot of personalities you're potentially dealing with, or there's, this, okay, what happens when the playbook, the expanse of the playbook runs out, and then you kind of see, that's where you get to see in these situations. In class, you'll get to, again, see the book, to be able to test things out, even test environments. This is definitely more that the interaction, and I'm going to say it's a lot of the soft skills that they'll get to see, right? That's something that it's very, very hard to emulate and very, very hard to teach within a classroom setting is, you have to have the soft skills. You have to, and so they get to see how this is modeled. Especially with people that, some people that know each other, but a lot of people that, again, have no, commonality, no relation really coming into this other than being experts in the field.
Maddie, if I can jump in very quickly over there, right? And wow, is this such a comforting thing? I don't need to ask the questions. I just need to respond. So relaxing. Look, and what I'm going to say is probably not a very popular opinion, but so be it. I think when you use the analogy of games, like WWE and all of this stuff, I go back to when we used to watch WWF when I grew up in Dubai, and when things like Street Fighter just came out and Mortal Kombat and all of that stuff, right? The characters became superheroes to some extent, in good ways, but also in some bad ways. kids would begin to emulate them. What ODTN, especially Young Defenders of the North, does is create something that is very difficult to achieve, and that is giving students access to some of these superheroes in the cyberspace. Now, all of these individuals that sit on the advisory board have a responsibility. That is, if these students reach out to you, even if you don't have a job to offer them, you become a superhero if you just take a call with them, even for 15 to 20 minutes, and give them that confidence. You become that important person that allowed them to move on to another page and better punctuate their process if you agree to meet with them even for 30 minutes to give them a little bit of guidance. It's a very, very important responsibility that you take on. Yes, this access piece is not easy to get done, and I understand all of our advisors have very, very busy and effective schedules, but that's why we're here. And again, I will repeat this, and this is why I say it's an unpopular opinion to some degree. If you're going to join the advisory board of any conference, the second you see that the conference organizers are making the effort to create that access, if you cannot commit to that, don't be on the board. It's just as simple as that. This is not an opportunity just to get a couple of clicks on LinkedIn and a bit of visibility. Because seriously, if as a CISO you still need a lot of that visibility, there are other problems. And again, I know that's a bit of an aggressive stance, but once you bring these students in, there's a responsibility that we take on, and we need to address that, and we need to accept that.
I want to talk about communication being one of the most important things, especially in a tabletop exercise. And I know we have 15 minutes left, and look, this is the first one. We don't have 1.6 million people on. I hope one day maybe we do, maybe we don't. Doesn't matter. For me, really is how much education we can provide to people that we are on. That's been the motto and mission of siberX since day one. It's never been about quantity, but about quality. And there's about 4 or 5 people on that have messaged me privately or on LinkedIn and said, can we, they're listening. So this is for you, 5 that are on. It comes to communication. And so, James, one of the things, most powerful things that you brought up was about communication on how, in ODTN, in Operation Defend the North, the communication is like, well, what do you think, sir? Whereas when you're in the thick of things, it's not, hey, what do you think, James? It's panic mode a little bit, right? But when it comes to communication, what advice can you give to those that are listening, especially around cybersecurity, that you give to students that they can take away with today and they can start practicing on this? What would be that? And then I'll leave for you as well.
Yeah, I think for me, especially when it comes to these high stakes scenarios, is practicing with the intent to listen and listen, learn, and then respond. I think it really comes back to, you have to understand. I mean, depends on no matter what your role is within this scenario, whether you're in leadership or you're somebody providing technical support, you need to understand, what your compatriots are, what your everybody around the table is asking for. Some of them are asking for reassurance. Some of them are asking for technical details. You have to make sure you understand what the question is before you, relate back to it. I think just speaking to speak, it's pointless. It's, the aspect of making sure that your communication, you're taking in, even if you need to take the extra 2 to 3 seconds that takes before if somebody's point blank asks you a question, you collect your thoughts, then respond. Don't just respond just to respond.
I love that. That's so, and those are things you teach kids. Like the most simplest things of communication, is slow down, take a deep breath, relax, read the room, read the person, and then respond and listen more so that you know what's happening. Ali?
Very, very insightful. What I tell students is, if you want to get started in security, obviously your technicals are important. Look, and this note, can a CISO be non-technical, and all of these. I'm sorry, this is a very off-the-cuff conversation, so I'm just going to say some of this garbage talk that you hear. Oh, I can be a CISO without being technical. This is all nonsense at the end of the day. I'm sorry. I'm not saying that you have to be a programmer, but you need to understand what you're talking about if somebody tells you something as simple as what encryption standards are you using. So That aside, but one of the things that I always tell them is communications is critical. Now, where do you start from? And this is what I do. I tell my students every day for 5 minutes, look at something around you, take it, record yourself, and talk to yourself about why this item is important. So today, or was it today or yesterday? I don't know. In my threat intel class, I told the students, I want you to start practicing because they have presentations coming up. And what I told them was, look outside, there's a vending machine. It's got a Pepsi can in there. It's a translucent one. You can see the can. Tell me something about why that can is important. And then I had one student say, that can reminds me that Pepsi is like the rest of us. It's trapped. The cost of freedom is either I can pay for it or I got to break the rules to get free. I got to choose. I was like, you get an A++, even if you don't.
And get the Pepsi. Yeah, and give them the Pepsi too.
Pepsi. You have to start practicing some of these things. Very small activities that you can do that allow you to not just speak in terms of, hi, my name is so-and-so. Speak by reading what's around you, understanding your context, knowing when to say what to say. So the first step that I tell a lot of my students to do is start here first. There's a whole journey we can go down. And maybe one day, if I get better at it, I may even produce a masterclass on this, but that is my starting point. 5 minutes every day for the next month, do this. And this wasn't my idea. When I was studying economics at York University during my undergrads under Dr. Ananya Mukherjee, who was on CyberExchange in 2020, if you remember, Maddie, she taught me this trick. And it really helped me as I began my lecturing career in my early grad studies in 2010.
I mean, you guys have you've summed up really the most simplest and basic ways to start building communication. And from a technology standpoint, I'll just add to because I know the young generation loves tech. We're like, well, if tech can't do it, then like, is there something what you want me to read something? There's a couple of sites out there that I've recommended to other people that are like, oh my God, I love tech. I don't own any of these companies, nor do those companies own me. But there's a company called Orai, O-R-A-I. It's an AI speech powered like coach that helps you. There's Speeko, S-P-E-E-K-O, which offers feedback on filler words and confidence in real time. And then there's Flip by Microsoft, which lets students record short video responses to prompts, which are also great as well for those that are listening. Hopefully you've taken some notes on that. Another question that's come in is, how do you regulate emotions during stressful situations? So very quickly on both of you on that, because I do have one more question that I want to leave, but how do you deal with emotion in a stressful situation, James?
Yeah, for me, it's interesting because I know myself. I know my triggers. I wear my emotions on my sleeve.
Love that.
It's so me. I actually know that I will get this flushed feeling. I'll start feeling this tingling feeling kind of from about here up, and feels that I can feel it all the way up to my hair. I'm like, okay, I know I'm stressed. I know this is what I normally do. Is I kind of let myself get to that point. I understand what it is, and I'm like, okay, I know that I'm stressed. I can acknowledge I'm stressed. Now take a deep breath and then move from there. And then what that allows me is, again, it's just knowing that I'm aware of my emotions that are going on right then. And then it's like, okay, I know I'm stressed. Now let's try to take the emotion back out of that, because I know that I've had my emotional response. So that for me, that's just the thing that I've seen with myself. I've noticed it kind of over the years and through events. And kind of more as I do public speaking, because public speaking is not a natural bend for me. I need to work on it. I think Ali's given me a lot of, and you guys both have given me a lot of notes about where I should be going and working with too. So,
thanks for that, James. Maddie, for me, I'm always, I'm always reminded, although I always fall short of this. My patron saint always tells me, never make a decision in anger, and never make promises in happiness. And you'll notice one thing is that whenever I'm at ODTN, I don't know if you recall, at ODTN Vancouver, before the second session began, I quickly had to duck into my bag because I had taken off my rings because it was itchy, and then something had happened. Just took it off, put some cream, and I forgot to put it back on. And then I put my rings back. I don't have them on right now. I put my rings back on. For me, something physical reminds me, and my rings have a lot of emotional attachment to me. Those often remind me about those core values, And it allows me to, in those highly stressful emotional situations, it allows me to sort of just go back to the basics. I think it's not easy at all. I've made many, many, many bad decisions in anger and many promises because, oh, the situation is solved. Now we'll do this for the future and that for the future. But having something physical as a reminder in real time, something portable, something physical, helps me regulate myself to some degree. I don't say it works all the time, but it really, really, really goes a long way. You will never find me moderating a session without my rings or my bracelet. And yes, there's an emotional, soteriological relationship to it, but it's also about a physical reminder. You hear about a lot of great entrepreneurs, a lot of great individuals who'll say, I have this, on a wall in my office. That wall in my office, or that physical thing, is my rings and the attachment that it has to me and those reminders that it brings me back to. And I think there you'll find some people that will have something like this, the fidget spinner. Some people might have other things that they keep around them, and I think you need to respect and embrace that. The standard idea of you're sitting there just with a suit and everybody looks the same now. Some people need certain music as well while these things are happening. So we have to embrace that in these highly charged situations.
Yeah, I mean, fidget spinners. As we're talking about physical grounding tools, which I think is key for everyone, whether it's an object, a bracelet, a bead, a ring, a rock, something that kind of anchors you back. And again, another powerful tool to give to those that have struggle or deal with emotion. And I think, James, you kind of put it the best. You can tell your heart change, your breathing change, you feel flush, you feel flight, like you just know something has happened internally. You just have to recognize it. Sometimes it means getting off social media for a bit and really just kind of connecting with yourself again. I think that's the other thing. So we got about 5 minutes left. Advice for those that are going to be watching online. And again, I'm going to hit my students again because that is the majority of folks that are on today. And again, we will be doing this every Thursday at 2000 hours, regardless of what happens in the world. We'll always be on as long as there's internet. We are going to, Ali, we've been talking, and James is potentially post Operation Defend the North in Calgary, right at 5 o'clock. We can use some space outside and go live and interview people and stuff like that. And maybe even Thursday in Vancouver and so on and so forth. But for the folks that are listening, especially students, the ones that we gave the communication advice to, the ones that we gave the grounding advice to with emotion, what advice, James, would you give for those students that are going to be watching online, that they can then, like tools that they can then take and then go back and work on it to better build some experience or some education on tabletop exercises?
Yeah, I'm going to say probably watch the advisors, watch them closely, find the ones that you want to emulate, because there's going to be some that are going to be better spoken than others. There's going to be some that communicate in a certain fashion that you think that sticks. Take that, write notes, copious notes around what you're noting, and then take that to dissect later. It's good to understand and see through the process in the time given, but then afterwards take that, dissect that, and then so if you're, for example, wanting to emulate that type of communication, you can then understand, well, how do they go through that? Why do they go through that? Go back and look at the recordings then afterwards too, just to understand all that, and or reach out to those advisors afterwards. Part of that, we've talked about giving back to the community, but basically just give yourself the time to look at the things, understand what's jiving and then what's not jiving too, I guess, is the other side.
So I second that. And from my perspective, as a closing comment, the student needs to ask themselves, am I looking for a job or am I looking to learn? If you're looking for a job when you've been given access, many of them complimentary to this event, and that's also a big kudos to your team, Maddie, that enables all of this. Because listen, even on running a show online, especially at that level of production, it doesn't come cheap. James has to make sure he's got, wink, wink, James, 1 gig throughput symmetrical, so that it's all clean and clear into the stream. But there's equipment, there's a lot of things that go into running a virtual show. So I think kudos to your team for giving them access, but to all the students that are watching, you got to ask yourself, am I looking for a job or am I looking to learn? And if the answer is the former, I suggest you then go back to Indeed and keep zombie applying and then wait for something to come back your way with some luck. If you're looking to learn, you're looking to take some items out of this, you can then from this start to do your own posts, your own comments on it. You can start to make yourself visible by asking the right questions as if you are in a classroom. And someone eventually will notice who you are. And someone will eventually remember you either when you do apply for that job or when they're looking for someone. I remember that person asking those questions. Let me give them a call. It's a fundamental question you need to answer for yourself.
Stay consistent, hustle, study hard. There's a time and place for everyone. You just got to be there at the right time and place. So when someone does ask you that question, you're able to communicate properly. You're able to control your emotion and from that excitement and ground yourself. And then at the end of the day, just stay true to yourself. So thank you for everyone. Thank you, James, for spending some time with us. It was insightful. We look forward to seeing you in T-minus 5 days, I think it is. Sooner than that, but T-minus 5 days. And for those that are watching on, we look forward to having you at Operation Defend the North, Ali. We look forward to your magnificence, sharing and breaking it down for us. Thank you, everyone. Go Jays, go. Have a good evening.